Welcome back to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dana and Tom. We're the Boro podcast that gives you the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs of Middlesbrough Football Club. And today I'm so glad we're joined by a guest who's played over 250 games professionally and is now an excellent coach at West Bromwich Albion, assisting Sam Allardyce in the Premier League. We're so glad to welcome to the podcast Robbie Stockdale. Robbie, welcome. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you guys. Very good. Yeah, yourselves?
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Bad.
Very good.
Really good. Robbie, I'm going to start right at the very beginning. You're a young lad from Redcar, but growing up, was football always something that you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to pull you up there. I was in Mask to start
Mask?
with. Yeah, and those people, you know. Obviously, Boro born, grew up in Mask, moved to Redcar when I was about 14. But yeah, I think as far back as I can possibly remember, it was football all the way. Playing out in the street after school, playing for primary schools, playing for districts, all the way through. It was all I ever wanted to do. I was very focused on that. I was very dedicated with it. And no other thing came close to it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Grew up a Middlesbrough fan. Got into the School of Excellence at about 7-8 years old, which was at Ayresome Park. You three too young, aren't you? Or been to Ayresome Park, will you?
Yeah, just a bit. Just a bit.
Just a little bit.
You've seen black and white photos of me playing at Ayresome Park, haven't you? So Ayresome Park, and I know we might go on to it later, but at 14, it's a little bit different then to what it is now. You could sign schoolboy forms, which sort of made you associated with that club. And I remember signing, I remember it quite clearly actually. I was on my 14th birthday at Ayresome Park, signing on the pitch with the then manager Lenny Lawrence and a youth development guy called Ron Bourne, who's retired recently. We drew with Portsmouth in front of about 4,500 supporters. And that was sort of my start point, sort of signed on with the club, really. But yeah, it was always football. I grew up watching the team. Fortunate enough to be ball boy at every home game because I knew the guy that ran the ball boys. And I started to find a position next to the home dugout. So I was Lenny Lawrence's right-hand man on the ball boy situation. So if we were losing, I got the message around to the rest of the ball boys, we have to throw the ball in quick. If we were winning, you slow it down. So all that kind of stuff. It was great.
Yeah, slow it down, throw the ball at the fans, just slow it like.
A multi-ball at that time as well, so the ball went up into the stand. It could take a couple of minutes to get back. All that, all the dark arts that people call it. Now we were doing that years ago, honestly.
It's to be fair, it hasn't changed too much, though, has it really? But in terms of your YES forms and coming through the centre of excellence, originally you were forward, correct? So obviously the transition's I'm going to come to the transition in a second, but at the time when you're going through the centre of excellence, is there anyone that you looked up to? Do you have any heroes at that time or anyone that you're inspired to be like?
Well, the team would have been that time people like, and I actually went on to play with quite a few of them later on, but it would have been someone like Stephen Pears in goal, Gary Parkinson, Tony Mowbray, Pally, Jimmy Phillips would have been around that time. The big stars, I guess, with someone like Bernie Slaven, Stuart Ripley, all these kind of names. So they were the kind of people that I used to watch every other week at Ayresome. So as a young kid, you kind of flip between heroes, don't you? But it was the team. Yeah. It was the team that I supported, and like you say, everybody wanted to be Bernie Slaven, but he was always offside. Everybody wanted to be Stuart Ripley, but kick the ball over the goal when he was crossing. Tony Mowbray, everybody wanted to be Tony because he'd come off with cuts and bruises everywhere. And so I wouldn't necessarily say there was one player that I sort of idolised. It was more a team kind of ethic that I really liked and just supported them all the way through, really.
Yeah, that team is very well loved by a lot of Boro fans, and you don't really have to explain why, to be honest. But is there anyone in that team, or is there anyone that who was with you during your academy days that give you a bit of advice that's always stuck with you?
No, because I mean, it wasn't the same as what it was now. So, School of Excellence was literally you train maybe twice a week on a weeknight in the gym at Ayrsham. You'd play on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, but you're allowed to play for all your other clubs as well. So, kids now in academies, they're associated to a club. They maybe train 5 times a week. They can only play for the club on a weekend, and it wasn't like that. But I think the biggest influences at that time are more the coaches. Yeah. And, I was really fortunate. I was very kind what you said about where I am now and the coach I am. I actually think it's a completely different skill set to coach younger players and get them engaged and teach them the basics. And I was really lucky that I had some top ones at Middlesbrough. To name check a few: Ron Bourne, Stan Nixon, Dave Geddes, Kenny Wharton, all names that maybe not mean much to you, but kind of put the building blocks and the ground base of what you later become. And it wasn't just the skills and the techniques. And it was understanding of the game. It was understanding that you have to work hard at it, that you have to be humble and respectful to oppositions. All that kind of stuff came into it. It was a different time to what it is now. And people called it old school. People call it old school now, and I hate. I think it's just common values and how you treat people and hard work. Why is that old school? That should be what we're doing all the time, surely.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It's strange that people find it like uncommon. People find that uncommon, where it should just be a natural behaviour for people, shouldn't it? So it's bizarre that people think about that. But in terms of those people that were the father figures to you, essentially, the people that you mentioned.
They guided you, because when you were there, you hung on every word because you want to impress them. Yeah. Every training session, there's a pecking order every training session, isn't there? Even now, kids will find out where, and players, senior players do. I'll put a training session on. It's competitive because they want to show people what they can do, and they want to be better than the player they're playing against. So father figure's probably a bit too strong, but certainly in terms of the influence your behaviours, I would say that. And we were fortunate enough to go when I was a little bit older, probably 14. I think we won the Milk Cup in Ireland at under 14 level. And I was the captain of that team. And we beat Man United in the final at Coleraine. And the Milk Cup was the biggest youth tournament, probably, I'd say, in Europe at the time. You had teams coming from all over the place. And we won that. And then we went to a tournament in Milan. We beat AC Milan in the final under 15s. And we had a really strong team. And so it was quite... It pushed you to be better and better all the time. And the coaches sort of kind of made that environment competitive. So every training session got out, it was full on. It was you're trying to impress. So in that terms, maybe not father figures, but certainly an influence on how you behaved and how you played. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think so. When you mentioned there, you're playing like the Milk Cup, and you're also traveling the globe, playing for Middlesbrough, really. And originally, now you can fact check me on this one, but originally you were a striker. You've moved to right back. Now, obviously, in academy, you are taught to play different positions, where you'll probably start off on right back in one half. You might move to centre midfield the second half. You might go up front. Was that quite similar to you? Did you just play right back one day and everyone thought, that's a position that could really suit him, because you can see the game right in front of you, can't you? And so was that an easy transition to make?
Do you know what? I can't remember exactly how it sort of manifested itself. So you're right. I was more of a forward player, or actually a centre midfielder or a winger. But then so for my Sunday League team, and it was the same Sunday League team, but I played with people like Anthony Ormerod was in it. We also played for Boro, and we had a strong sort of group of lads. But I always played. I never ever played at my own age group. Not for Sunday Leagues or for Middlesbrough. I always played 1 or 2 years above myself to challenge me. And I was quite a good player, so it wasn't so, I could take it easy. They were always pushing you. So I remember I remember playing for Middlesbrough's youth team, which is under 18s. So obviously you leave school, so it'd be between 16 and 18s, that squad of players. And I remember playing for that team at 14 because I felt I could handle it. And they probably thought, you know what, if they play me in midfield at 14 against 18-year-olds, it'd be a bit too much for me. Centre forward, you might find it. So it might have naturally been, well, we'll play him at right back because he's not directly up against people physically. You might have a winger to cope with and all the rest of it. I get that. So it might have manifested itself like that and just developed over time. And then, again, the year above me at Middlesbrough, there wasn't many came through my age group, but the year above me was Anthony Ormerod, Steve Baker, Andy Campbell, Craig Harrison was a year above that. Mark Somerville was Craig's year. So I had 5 players there already ahead of me in certain positions. So probably 16, 17 was where I started to find my niche at this right back position and just sort of went from it from there, really. And also probably it was a blessing in disguise because I look at some of the senior players above those boys I just mentioned, and it would have been very difficult to get into a midfield with the players that the first team had, and they were signing new Ravanellis and all these kind of players in centre forwards. You probably thought, well, I'm probably best off at right back.
Yeah, played it safe at right back, just thought the safest option.
Everyone says that's a boring, but I always say it's the most important position on the pitch, but I wouldn't I?
Oh. Well, to be fair, the way the game's changing now, and when you see the likes of, obviously, the natural example would be Trent and Robson, how much they impact Liverpool's play. It's starting to come back around again, isn't it? Obviously, and cause the overlap and stuff like that. So
they're giving us old fullbacks a bad name, to be honest. I never played like that. What they're doing going up the halfway line, that's terrible. It has developed. They are more sort of wingers now, aren't they? You know, I was never that, and I wouldn't pretend to be. But you know, there was somebody on the other side of the pitch. I had 2 actually on the other side of the pitch at left back that thought they were wingers, and sort of they got the glory of that, and I had to do the mopping up with the other 2 centre backs at the back.
So, would you have preferred to go further forward, or were you happy just to stick back?
Well, no, you always do. You know, I played behind players, and this is going to sound like the right cop out. I played a lot of time behind players who had more freedom to do what they wanted to do because I was behind them. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So if I think of the players that I played behind when I first broke in, it would have been players like, my memory, Phil Stamp. Who else would have played on the right at that time? Alan Johnston, Jonathan Greening, Carlos Marinelli. I think Janino might have played in front of me a couple of times. So all these players, I felt, were a bit freer than a normal sort of winger that would do the job up and down the pitch. And I always felt it was my job just to support them. And, you know, Carlos was a nightmare to play behind. Brilliant, but a nightmare. You'd give them the ball and you'd overlap them and they wouldn't pass you it. They'd lose it. And then I'd run back past them the other way to get into my defensive position, giving them all the names under the sun. And I'd keep doing it. So I was the best decoy runner as an overlap ever. But yeah, just I don't know. And I think because we had left backs that were very, very good at going forward, better than I was, it just kind of balanced out a little bit. So I think of the left backs would have been Dean Gordon when I first played there, Christian Ziege, and Frank Quidrew. And they were all brilliant going forward. So if 2 full-backs went forward, it kind of left the rest of the team exposed. So I just used to say, you do what you like. I'm just going to make sure we're nice and safe at the back here.
Go on, Tom. Do you want to take through?
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to the start of your senior career at Middlesbrough. Made your first team debut in 2-0 FA Cup win against QPR, playing 90 minutes on your debut. When did you find out you were getting the start? And how was that experience?
It was great. I remember I found out the day before. So Brian Robson was the manager. It was the replay against QPR. I think I wasn't involved in the first game. And found out I was playing the day before, and it was before I had a mobile phone, so I couldn't tell anybody. And driving home to me. I was living at my parents at the time in Redcar, driving home from the training ground, and it came on the radio that I was going to be playing. And that was like a big, hairs on the back of your neck. You're all excited, and then you start to shit yourself a bit. Oh my God, I'm going to be playing. Can't believe it. Didn't sleep a wink. Got to the game. I was the only one in a tracksuit. Everybody else had club suits. So that makes you feel a bit awkward straight away. Vividly remember that their team going up, and I can't remember who I was meant to be playing against it on their left wing. But as their team lined up, it was Trevor Sinclair, who was just in the England squad and everything at the time. And to be honest, yeah, just very, very nervous. Just really thinking, don't make a mistake. I remember getting cramp in both my calves after about 20 minutes of the first half, just with the anxiety and nerves of it all. But then we won the game, and it sort of just drifts into the back of your mind. And I remember it was a midweek game, and the youth team had a game on a Saturday. Discussion: do I play for the youth team? It was decided I shouldn't, but I wasn't going to be in the senior squad. But because the youth team were away, I had to do the jobs for the first team on the senior squad. So I got man of the match on the Wednesday, and then I was pumping up the balls and putting the kit out on the Saturday for players who were playing. So it kept you grounded. But it was one of those things that unless you've lived it for your hometown club and you supported them all your life and big to every game, it was like it was a fantastic feeling, yeah.
And you went on to play one more game that season before you became more established in the next season after that, after promotion, where you played 22 games in that season. So as a kind of 19, 20-year-old, you're playing in the Premier League for your hometown club. Do you ever kind of have a I must be dreaming here moment, or do you kind of just take it all in stride?
Both, really. I think if I was 17 when I played the debut, so the next season I've been 18, and I think you never take it for granted, and I never ever did. I always remember a quote from an older player, and it was Stuart Pearce, and I'd read a quote that when he got called up to the England squad, he always felt if he played well in one game, it meant he'd get the next, but then he'd have to in that game to get the next, and that's the kind of mentality I had. Did I sometimes pinch myself and think this is what I'm doing 100%, but at the same time I wanted more of it, and I felt if you just think, well, this is it, this is great, I've made, then you don't get the next bit. So it was, to be honest, it was a little bit of both. There was moments where you think, wow, look where I'm playing here. But then you have to snap out of that, because if you have that mentality, you're not going to perform on the pitch. You're going to be in awe of everything. So a little bit of both, really.
Yeah, definitely understandable. In that team that you were playing in, you had the experienced players, the likes of Andy Townsend, Paul Merson, Gaza, even Brian Robson as manager, kind of ex-Man United player, ex-England international. So how important was it as a young player to kind of have that experience in the team and managing it while you're establishing yourself in it? Yeah,
it was really useful, and as much in training as anything else. Again, I go back to my day. I don't remember much of that season in terms of who was playing, but I remember my debut and I was playing alongside Nigel Pearson was playing, Steve Vickers, Robbie Muster was in me, and it just helps you through. There's no doubt about it. It's a bit of a the settle you down, the sort of give you tuck in, push you on, all that kind of stuff that a senior player should do with a young player coming in. But yeah, definitely helped without a shadow of a doubt.
It was definitely a dressing room full of characters as well. You got any stories from that time you were able to share with us?
Yeah, it was just different. So back in, I'm going to sound really old now. Back in those days, used to have to share hotel rooms and stuff like that. I remember my very first trip I had to share with Gary Pallister, and I remember Pally on the phone to his wife, and I was so nervous. You can imagine, I was a 17, 18-year-old kid, and ex-Man United championship and all the rest of it player. And he just started to, he was on the phone to somebody and he just said, yeah, Robbie Stockdale, I'm rooming with him, just a young kid, blah, blah, blah. And then he just let me over here. Yeah, he's not even ran me bath yet or made me a cup of tea. And I'm looking thinking, is that what I'm meant to do? So I let it go. He put the phone down. I let it go for a couple of minutes, trying to act all cool. And guys, do you want a cup of tea? I'm just going to put the kettle on. He started obviously wetting himself with laughter. It was all a big stick joke. But do you know what? It was just, again, without sounding like an old fogey, it was a bit different times. You could go out and a few lads could after a game could go out for a meal and there was no camera phones in your face. There was no social media. You could let your hair down a little bit. And I don't mean that in an unprofessional way, but I see the lads now and every move is sort of filmed and captured, and they can't do anything. Yeah. Well, it was a bit freer, I'd say that those times, but it is what it times change, don't they? And what they've got now, they've got so many possibilities through all of that, and some of them quite embrace it.
Absolutely. In the 2000-2001 season, the season afterwards, you were sent out on loan to Sheffield Wednesday. How did that move come about? And do you feel that that loan prepared you to come back, ready to establish yourself in the team further?
No, probably not. So loan moves are really funny, and they still are. That some work, some don't. We've got lots of young players at our club at the moment, and they're desperate to go out on loan, and you've got to be careful with that. Sometimes the loans don't work out. How do they come back? How do they react? Is the club that they're going to the right club now? Brian Robson at the time pulled me in one morning and just said, listen, we've had a loan inquiry for you at Sheffield Wednesday. I want you to go. It'd be a good experience. And I agreed. I mean, it was a huge club. Went there and I went in, and it was chaos behind the scenes. They'd just been relegated from the Premier League. They had all these players on huge money but refusing to play. But they were still training. You have to legally still get them into the training ground. It was just weird. I was only a kid. It was just a weird situation to go into. Really strange. Played 6 games. Record wasn't great. I think we lost all 6. And it was just a very insecure club to go in at the time. You always learn from stuff like that, but did I come back a better player and ready to fight? Probably not. Truthfully, it was hard work. It was a difficult month, I guess.
I mean, during that season, that was the season Terry Venables was brought into Middlesbrough as the head coach to help keep Boro up. How did it kind of feel as a lone player looking in on that situation from the outside? I mean, did you have any kind of contact with teammates to stay informed on the situation? Anything like that's going on, really? I suppose it's an aspect no one kind of tends to think about when a club's going through that, is how the lone players must see that looking inwards. Yeah,
I think I was back by the time Terry had come in. I'm sure I certainly was in the training ground the day that he did come in and address the players with Brian and Viv and Gordon. So whether I was just on the back end of that loan spell or not, I'm not too sure. But actually, I did start to get involved with a bit of Terry's teams. I was back sort of travelling with the squads, maybe not on the bench. And there were certainly games I was on the bench quite a lot with that. So probably the fact that I'd been out on loan and come back and he saw I'd played games maybe did help. So yeah, I didn't play an awful lot, but I did feel prior to going to Sheffield Wednesday, I wasn't involved with squads at all. And then coming back from Sheff, I did start to get a little feel that actually chance of getting some minutes. So it wasn't too big an issue, really.
How was it being part of that squad then with Terry Venables coming in? Obviously, you just mentioned there he addressed the players kind of on his first day with everyone. It seems a bit of kind of a strange power dynamic between him and Brian Robson at the time, considering the head coach role would typically be to kind of serve under the manager.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago. I can't remember the dynamics exactly, but Terry came in and all I remember is it seemed very fluid. There didn't seem many issues there. Obviously, somebody with great experience. Brian and Terry had worked with England before, and there seems to be a good dynamic between them. The ins and outs of how Terry came in, I have no idea. I don't know how that manifested itself, but certainly to our players, all the staff, in terms of the senior staff and management, it just seemed not an awful lot changed really. Obviously, Terry took a lot of the sessions and a lot of the training, but there was no feeling that it undermined Brian in any way. When Brian spoke, it still had that power. There's people from the outside maybe look at it was strange, but again, I think you alluded to, we had a squad of quite senior players, and as much as anything, they guide you through as a young player anyway. It's fine.
At the end of that season, that was the one where Brian Robson left the club, was replaced with Steve McLaren. Firstly, how was it kind of seeing the manager who brought you into the team leaving? And also, what were your first impressions of Steve McLaren when he came in?
Yeah, it's never nice. I mean, I'm on the other side of it now, so I know how precarious a coaching and manager's position are. So, no, it's never nice. And you got to remember, I was a Boro fan when Brian first came into the club, and what he did for not only the players that he brought into the club, but the infrastructure that was built around it. Look at the training ground and the stadium. Brian would have had a massive impact in that. And there's no way that we'd have got some of the players that played for us if it wasn't for him. You think, why would the Brazilian Player of the Year come and play for Middlesbrough? It was because of Brian. So there's always a sadness with somebody who's impacted a club so heavily leaves. At the same time, the writing was probably on the wall with Terry coming in and things like that. It might have been difficult for him to go back to it, and it's probably a natural sort of decision for the club and for Brian to make. Steve coming in was great for me. I've got to be honest. I wasn't particularly featuring an awful lot in the first team. I think I did play a game either the year before or that season that Steve, the very first time I met him, we beat Derby 5, I think it was, 6 at the Riverside. And I played in that game, and Steve remembered it. And that was the first thing he said, why have you not been involved as much? I remember you playing this game, we'll see what we can do. And I think Steve wanted to change the dynamic of the squad a little bit and bring some younger players through. Because obviously we come from United, and that's how they did it. So I got the best of both worlds. I got my first manager as Brian Robson, who was this cult hero of the game. Yeah. And as my game time sort of diminished, I got a new manager who wanted to promote from within and a bit of youth. So it was great for me.
Did you notice much of a change in culture between the two management regimes?
Culture is probably the phrase I do. Certainly, every manager's got different ways of doing stuff. Honestly, I've worked with probably 6 managers at senior level, and then when I was doing the 21s at Sunderland, another 4. None of them are the same. They've all got different strengths, different weaknesses, all got different ways of going about the work, all got different ideas on how the game should be played. So Steve coming in just had a different way to Brian, and he was more coachy, I would say that. Brian had a lot of senior players who didn't need coaching. They've been in the game a long time, but Steve wanted to sort of change the dynamic of the team, and he was a head coach as well as manager, and that suited me. I was learning the game still, and managed to get back into the team.
And as you alluded to there, getting back into the team, it was a good season to come back in. You were involved in that year's FA Cup run. And ended in a 1-0 defeat against Arsenal at Old Trafford. Arguably, Boro deserved to win. I was there. I think we deserved to win.
I feel like I got PTSD from Fester's own goal from being there. Just every. God, it makes me feel sad. That. But anyway, sorry, Tom.
What was like being a part of that run? But it also must have been a pretty special game to be a part of right at the end of it.
It was. I think barring my debut, it was my favourite game, even though we got beat. I remember we stayed in a hotel in Manchester the night before. I did not sleep a wink again. I always got a little bit nervous for the games. And then on the way to Old Trafford, we didn't know, but the staff had put together like this motivational video of the cup run up to that point. And as they played it, it had clips of everybody doing a tackle or a goal. You know, so every player got a little block of the video. And as we played it, we actually pulled into Old Trafford, and our supporters at the end where the tunnel is, and it still makes the hairs on the back of the neck go up now. And we turned the corner, and it was just thousands of Boro fans, and this video was playing. It felt like Gladiator going into the Coliseum. You know, it was class. It was amazing. And then, no word of a lie, after 15 minutes of the first half, I can't remember a thing. It just went like that. I do not remember anything in the first 15 minutes until we missed a couple of chances. And then Hugo does his calf. Gianluca comes on, scores the own goal. And then we huffed and puffed a bit, played well. And then my last memory of it was, I think David Seaman had a goal. The Arsenal goalkeeper had a goal kick. And I said to the ref, how long? And he went, that's it, game's over. And I don't know if you remember, but Thierry Henry always used to come and play on the left-hand side for them. So I'm playing right full back. Thierry Henry comes and stands next to me, waiting for the goal kick. And when the referee said, tied it up, he said, oh, very unlucky today, your team played well. I said, thank you. He said, Thierry, can I have your shirt after the game? He said, oh, so sorry. He said, I've promised it to Mr. Potato Head, which is the FA Cup semi-final last minute, right? He said, I promised it to Mr. Potato Head. I said, who? Potato Head? And he just pointed and went, Windass. The FA Cup semi-final. But a great game, like you say, unlucky losers, I guess, but fantastic, you know, unbelievable atmosphere and occasion.
I mean, it's unfortunate you don't remember kind of anything from the first 15. I mean, speaking of Dean Windass, he's what I remember from the first 15 minutes in that match. I think it was Patrick Vieira who he absolutely went through in the first couple of minutes as kind of like a welcome to the game challenge.
Yeah, well, we had a makeshift team as well, didn't we? Did Michael DeBeeve?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Luke Wilkshire played, Alan Johnston played, Dean played. I think Musto might have been, Robbie might have been midfield. I know Jonny was out injured. I think Incy was out injured. Obviously, Gianluca came off. Frank. So yeah, we were gallant losers, I guess, on the day.
What could have been? I think, yeah, it's probably one where it should have been a win, but. Also, during your time with Boro, you changed your international allegiance to Scotland, and you got 5 caps for the national team during that time. How did that decision come about, and how was that feeling of kind of representing Scotland on the international stage?
Okay, so when rewind to when you sign for a club, there's lots of forms, as you can imagine, you have to fill in with heritage of where your family's from, and my grandma was Scottish, born and raised in Scotland, a little place called Campbelltown. So you put that on the forms, and don't really think much more about it. Managed to get into a couple of England under-21 squads, but never played in a competitive game. And then as I sort of became a bit of a regular in the Middlesbrough team, I can't remember who mentioned it, but I'm sure it was someone, it might have been Gordon McQueen or something like that, and I just mentioned, I can play for Scotland, and it was never something that I'd hid or even brought up. It was just a sort of throwaway comment, and then Scotland got in touch. Would I be interested? So it's not the most exciting story, to be honest. It was always there. It was always bubbling under, and then Bertie Vogts called me up for a couple of squads. Funny enough, that we had a game. We had a rearranged Premier League game again at Old Trafford this time against Man United. I think it was a Sunday night or a Monday night, and it was rearranged. It was going into international break. Scotland had a game against the Faroe Islands on the Saturday, And I was called up to the squad, and Bertie rang me to say, you need to pull out of the Premier League game. I've called you up to the squad. I said, well, I'm not doing that. It's Old Trafford, and the club would never let me do it anyway. So he withdrew me from the squad, which would have been my first competitive game in the Faroe Islands, and they drew 2-2. Might even got beat. I think they drew 2-2. So in the end, it was a good one to miss. Yeah. But yeah, that's just how it happened. Great experience going away with the national team. Went to Hong Kong and Korea before the World Cup and played a lot of warm-up games for countries over there. Made my debut at Aberdeen against Nigeria, of all teams. So yeah, just a really good experience. Good, and I always, how could you turn down playing at the highest level, international football? It would have been stupid. So no, I enjoyed it. It was good.
Yeah, and then after that, whilst you were still contracted to Boro, you enjoyed a rather successful loan spell at Rotherham. And the following season, it was made permanent. At the time, Boro had quite a shortage of right-backs. Danny Mills obviously went back after his loan spell. And I think Andrew Davies had an injury. Tony McMahon was sort of just coming through after the FA Youth Cup win. So given that opening, do you feel as though you could have staked your claim for that right-back spot? Or was it a case of, it was the right time to go?
I think it was probably the right time. Like you say, these young players are coming through. I'd actually had a loan spell at West Ham before I went to Rotherham, and I was going to sign permanently. The clubs had agreed a fee, so I played Cardiff in the league away for West Ham on a Saturday night, and they had Tottenham away in the cup on the Tuesday. And there was discussions. I wasn't meant to be cup tied, so Middlesbrough first said he can't play in the cup, and then West Ham said, well, if we agree to buy him, then, he's our player. Can we do the cup game? And Middlesbrough agreed a fee. And it was due to go through after the cup game. I got injured in the cup game, believe it or not. And then that was my loan spell. So I stayed 3 months at West Ham, and for 2 of them I was injured after this Tottenham game. And the loan spell just filtered out. The permanent got cancelled. So I went back to Boro, obviously a bit scatty, a bit all over the place. I'd lost my place at Boro. I'd lost this potential move to West Ham. And then went, like exactly what you say, went on loan to Rotherham and started to really enjoy my football again. Rotherham in the Championship at the time. And, we were punching way above the weight. But I just really enjoyed the football. I remember one of the coaches at Middlesbrough sort of pulling me to one side to say they were signing Danny Mills when he came in, and the chance that I'd be permanent coming through. He said, you need to get yourself out of here. You're not going to play. You need to go play football. So as soon as somebody says that to you, you kind of know what you have to do, really. And then went to Rotherham, really enjoyed it. We stayed in the Championship and then signed permanently the summer after.
Yeah, Ronnie Moore was the manager that brought you to Rotherham, and he 2 years later brought you to Tranmere as well. He's quite a successful manager in the Football League. So has he influenced or had any impact on your coaching career?
well, Ronnie's a character. I would say that he's the one thing Ronnie did, and I hope this doesn't sound tactics and training was fine, but it wasn't the foremost of what he was trying to get out. What Ronnie does, and I think it's a real skill, is he gets players playing for him, but he also gets great characters in the changing room. And honestly, some of the stories I could tell you about that Rotherham squad wouldn't go on air. But what he managed to create was this tight-knit group of players that would run through a brick wall for each other, which would then get results. And they had quality as well. Some of the players were very good. You just sold players to much better teams than Rotherham, with all due respect. But Ronnie's skill was spotting the right characters and the right fit of player for what he wanted. And that sounds bizarre, but if you look at recruitment, that's probably the biggest thing in football. To be successful, you have to have the right recruitment. You have to get the right players in. And not only players that have got ability on the pitch, but have got the right attitude and characteristics of it.
He was nicknamed Ronnie Raw, I think I read, because of his humour apparently at Tranmere. So, yeah, character indeed. But speaking of your coaching career, actually started at Grimsby, didn't it? Being phased into it initially as a youth team coach, whilst also being registered as a player. Your first game as a caretaker manager was against AFC Wimbledon, winning the game 2-1. Not too bad of a start, that is it?
No, I don't remember that at all, to be honest with you. I know I had it for maybe 6 games, I think. Me and Dave Moore, who's the physio, great guy. And I'm pretty sure my record was 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses, I think.
Steady away, innit?
Yeah, playoff form, really.
Not bad, that.
No. Now, someone might check that and tell me I'm lying. And it's a genuine mistake. But something in the back of my mind says it was that. But yeah, it was, again, a really good grounding for me at Grimsby, starting. And again, I mean this with all due respect, it's a fantastic club. You know, the people there live and breathe the club. But it was starting on probably the bottom rung of the ladder in terms of coaching. I did everything in that youth setup. I hooked up the footballs for training, cleaned the kit, took it to the laundry, made sure that the pitch was correct for trip. All these things that academies don't do now because you've got dozens and dozens of staff. It was me and one other lad. But again, I wouldn't swap it for the world. It gives you a real grounding. And even now, I still tidy up all my equipment after. I don't leave it to anybody else. You know, I just think it's sometimes the right thing to do as much as anything.
Well, something came calling after that for you, and it's quite a turbulent time there in terms of, you know, the managerial situation. There were 10 managers there when you were at the club, 2 relegations as well back to back. Like I said, a bit of a turbulent time, a little bit of a mess. But did you enjoy your time on Wearside as a coach?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I went in to start with as a youth team coach and progressed to the under-21 manager, and we had a really successful team, like a really good team. I think back to some of the players that played in it. Jordan Pickford was my goalkeeper. John Egan was my centre-back. Watmore, Honeyman, Gooch. Who else would have been in that team? Players that have gone on to represent national teams. We went on something ridiculous, like a 21-game unbeaten run, beating Man City. So I was quite fortunate that the team that I inherited from Kevin Ball was very strong. Even in that under-21s we mentioned earlier, I had 4 different senior managers to work under. Martin O'Neill, Paolo Di Canio, Gus Poyet and Dick Advocat. And then when Dick leaves, I took training for the first team for a week or 2 when Sam came into the building. So then enjoyed working with Sam for the remainder of the season. We stayed up. Sam goes to England. And then I worked with David for a year. And then Simon Grayson for 4 or 5 months. And then Chris Coleman. So again, alluding to what we were talking about earlier, my role within that changed all the time. Some managers wanted to have a big influence on training, some didn't. Some of you were just there to support. But all of them different. All of them got their own ways of doing things, and that's what kind of makes it an enjoyable job, because you're never quite sure what the next one's going to bring.
Yeah, you mentioned it there, how successful that team was. You guided them to a 4th place finish. You mentioned that lengthy unbeaten run there. Ultimately landed you the role as the first team coach. So what are the key principles of a Robbie Stockdale team then? What is the Robbie Stockdale way?
I'd like to think it would be all those principles that we were talking about earlier: hard work, honesty, on the front foot. Now, everybody's got an ideal how he wants to play, and you know, I look at West Brom at the moment, and you know, we're better than what we were, and we want to play on the front foot, but occasionally you'll come up against Man City and know that you're only going to have the ball for 30% of the time. So then your philosophy changes, because you have to become a counter-attacking team, or you might play somebody else. And you know, what was our last game? We played Crystal Palace and we had over 50% possession. So now we have to try and break a team down. So I think in general terms, what I like my teams to be is certainly hardworking, certainly play with an honesty, support each other, be on the front foot, create chances. Is that always possible at the level that I work at? It's not, no. It's, you know, you're going to come up against better teams than us, and it's a way of then trying to minimise their strengths to then expose weaknesses. And some of the teams we play against don't have an awful lot of weaknesses, to be honest.
That is very true, especially in the Premier League. But Duncan Watman was a player that you mentioned there that you worked with in the under-21s and in the first team as well, obviously at Boro now. What was he like to coach? Because we've heard many good things about Duncan Watman, both as a person and as a player.
Yeah, Duncan's an absolute diamond. He's brilliant. So I went to scout Duncan when he was playing at Altrincham. So I went to watch. I drove all the way to Altrincham to watch him in a game. Came back and said, "We've got to sign him." He's raw. But he can run, and he sometimes it looked like he didn't really know what he was going to do with the ball, but it worked for him. So then Duncan came to us. I had him at under-21s, and he just got better and better the more he trained, the more he played. I think Man United had released him at under-14s, so he sort of had a basic of what the club would be like. But yeah, Dunk is not only is Duncan a fantastic footballer, he's a great person. Very, very intelligent, as you probably know, with his degrees and his studying. Comes from a fantastic family. Can't speak highly enough of him, to be honest. He was an absolute pleasure to work with. Like I say, I remember going to watching that first time at Altrincham, and he was getting a Player of the Month award on the side of the pitch, and he had this big bushy ginger hair, and his kit sort of just dangled off, and I thought, oh my God, is that who I've come to watch here? Looks like a gust of wind's going to blow him away. And he picked the ball up and he did his bits, and he's been so unfortunate with injuries. But it's sort of testament to him that through those serious injuries, unfortunately one was on my watch when I was caretaker manager at Sunderland, but through them he's kept coming back, and he's always kept that positive frame of mind, and that's not an easy thing to do. So it shows you that he's got a lot of strength to him, mentally and physically.
Did he ever consult you? Did he ever consult you about the move to Middlesbrough at all, Robbie?
Not particularly. I got a text from his dad after he'd scored 2. Did he score 2 really early on for Boro?
Yeah. He's quickly became one of the top scorers as well in such a short space of time.
Doesn't take much to do that, mind.
So I text Duncan his dad to say, he's got big shoes to fill now going to Middlesbrough, and then his dad texted me when he scored his second goal, and obviously I only scored 2 for Boro. On the lines of, can't believe it's took him this long to catch up with you with the goal. He scored in the next game to go ahead of me. I thought, well, you sod you. But no, he didn't really consult me. I think as soon as you go into the club, and he was training for a long time, wasn't he, before he signed at the club, I think he'd got a good feel for what it was like. It's fantastic people there, and obviously my old town club, so I'm not going to say too much bad about them.
Yeah, you were the steady right back, Robbie, so you can't really compare, to be honest.
Well, that's true. 2 wasn't bad then, was it?
Yeah, not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Yeah, I was just going to ask, you mentioned his injury there, and one of them was under your watch, you said. How do you, as a coach, how do you help him through that? Because that was, like you said, very unlucky with injuries.
Yeah, do you know when it's a long-term injury like that, sometimes you're better off just leaving them alone for a little bit so they can come to terms with it. And I mean that they obviously have the support of everyone within the football club. But when you know that it's going to be a 7, 8, 9 months, it almost, you have to come to terms with that yourself. And what we've tried to do in the past with and is involve them with things so they still feel part of the group. Because obviously the worst thing in the world is when you're injured, even if you're injured for a couple of weeks, is you're in a treatment room, you see everybody else go train, and you're sat on your own. Now imagine doing that for the second time for 9 months. It's not an easy thing to do. So certainly in terms of just keeping spirits up, getting him involved with tactical meetings that the other players are getting involved with, and it's not easy. I wouldn't sit here and say, oh yeah, because we did this, it made it so much better for him. And they still have had those really dark moments, like every player would when they're injured for that amount of time, and especially when it's the second time out. How is he going to come back from that? But you're just there to support. just there to support, and when those tough times come, make sure that he's got everybody around him encouraging him and making sure that everyone knows what a special person he is, and he'll come back.
Yeah, Duncan Watman's two teammates this season, Paddy McNair and Ashley Fletcher, you work with them as well. Both of those have become incredibly important to Boro of late. What were they like to work with? Because Fletcher seemed to struggle a lot at Sunderland.
Fletch just needed a bit of confidence. He's a confidence player. Once he started to get a run of games and understand what the role was, I think sometimes people see him and see this big frame and body and think he's going to be battering people about, and that's not really Fletcher's strength. It's movement and playing off the shoulder of people. But the perception is, well, he's 6'3". I don't know what he is, but say that. The perception is he's going to be battering centre halves, and now I think he can get better at that. And we spoke a lot of that at Sunderland, and I see him now, and he has bulked up a little bit. I know he's been injured again, so that's probably given him the chance. But he's a confidence player. He's quick. He's got a good touch. So as soon as he gets one or two goals, he'll get a lot more. You've also got Paddy there, who I had at Sunderland, Paddy McNair. I really like Paddy. Good player. Kane suffered a nasty knee injury at the same time as Duncan. So we'll talk about how do you keep the spirits up. They bounced off each other. They were injured within a week of each other, with exactly the same. So obviously you don't want that to happen, but the fact that there was two of them, they helped each other through. But Paddy, again, I know he's played in lots of different positions, hasn't he, at Middlesbrough this year?
He has, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Centre-back, yeah.
Centre-back, midfield. I think I saw him play right wing-back.
Yeah, Tony Pulis played in right wing-back, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not for me.
It's not for us either.
I always saw Paddy as a box-to-box midfielder. But I could see also him playing centre-back and doing very well at that, because he's quick and he can pass and he can head and he can do the bits that you need to do. I think if you'd ask Paddy, he'd probably want to play centre-mid because he's got an eye for a goal. He scored some important goals for us at Sunderland towards the back end of the year. And I think if he's fit and you play him in that position, he's probably getting double figures from midfield, I guess.
Well, I hope so next season if he does play in that position. But I was listening to a podcast that Fletcher was on last year, and he was talking about his time at Sunderland and how mentally tough it was, because, we all know North East fans are passionate, but sometimes it could come out in ways that don't necessarily benefit the team. Was it a little bit tough for you as well? Were there any times where you were thinking, this is a lot? Not really.
It would be harder for a player, I guess, because they're the ones that are sort of in a firing line on the pitch, aren't they? I don't think so. There was quite a few Middlesbrough boys up there that might say it was worse for them. Lee Cattermole was there at the time, so I never felt that. Whether people say it behind me back, that's fine. If you don't hear it, don't hurt you, does it?
That's true, yeah. Well, Halloween 2017 approaches and Simon Grayson is sacked. You're in charge of the Tears Weird Derby at the Riverside as well. How was that for you?
Really enjoyed it, actually. If I could have chosen one game to be in charge of, that'd have been it. It was a pretty dour game, I seem to remember. It wasn't great. I think it was quite early. Tav scored, didn't he?
Yeah, Tav scored and nothing happened for the rest of the game, I don't think.
We missed a great chance just before that. I don't know if you remember Lewis Grabban.
Yeah. Was it Randolph's save, I think it was? Yeah, fantastic, yeah.
Just filtered out into a bit nothing, didn't it? But no, it was a great experience, and it's weird, isn't it? Football always throws up bizarre little things like that. The one game that you get, it's at the Riverside, and unfortunately for me, I couldn't turn the Boro over, which I was desperate to do, and these things happen.
How did you approach that game? And obviously, Boro fan, played at the Riverside. Was it strange, or was it just a case of business as usual?
Yeah, it wasn't particularly strange. I've been back to Middlesbrough before as staff for Sunderland. I've played against Middlesbrough before as a player. So it wasn't. Genuinely, it just made it a bit more special. If my game had been Luton away, would it, it'd still been good, but would it have had that special, that that little bit of extra. So I just felt, there was no extra pressure. It was good. Obviously, half my family wanted me to lose, which was fine. So we're all Boro fans, my brother and everything. So, but no, there was no. I didn't feel any extra pressure. I just sort of embraced it for what it was. I knew Chris Coleman was coming in very soon, so just enjoyed the experience for what it is, and it so happened to be with Boro.
And then after Sunderland, you joined Hibs as assistant manager to Paul Heckingbottom. There's always a very negative perception from people south of Scotland about Scottish football. And I remember when Gordon Strachan came to Boro, he brought in a lot of players that did play in the SPL, and a lot of Boro fans just didn't quite like them. They didn't quite work at the club. So given that you've coached in both Scotland and England, can you understand that? Do you see the differences between the two sort of styles of play, if there are any?
I would say the styles of play, there's not a huge difference. You're going to get teams in every division that like to dominate the ball, or they like to counter-attack, or to play longer passes, or the work for set play. So I think in balance, you get a bit of everything in every division anyway. The one thing with Scotland is the league is so, what's the right word? So you play Rangers or Celtic and there's 50, 60,000 there. And the budgets are huge. And then the following week you play, with all respect, Hamilton or Livingston, and there's 800 people there. So the difference of levels between the league itself is quite big. I think the level is, it's all comparable. Like say in Scotland, you've got a couple of teams that could probably play a Championship, maybe Premier League at a push. Then you've got a couple that would be bottom Championship, and a couple of League One, but they're all in the one mix. So that's the biggest difference. But I really enjoyed it at Hibs. Really enjoyed the club. We started off really, really well, probably too well, and then the expectation was built up, and we couldn't quite live with that in the end. In terms of, we didn't get the results that we should have. But no, Scottish football was good, very intense. I would say that. You think the pressure's on in England. In Scotland, it's full. The crowd are very expectant, and like you say, sometimes the expectancy is probably not realistic. That a word, but no, I enjoyed it. Really good.
Yeah, it's a shame you didn't reunite with Paul. Obviously, he's now the Sheffield United manager until the end of the season. You've already played them now, so you probably won't see each other. But we'll come down to the closing questions, Rob. And you've had 27 years in football now, and counting, of course. What is your greatest ever achievement? Now, there could be one at the end of the season with West Brom, but what would be your greatest ever achievement in football?
I think 27 years is an achievement in itself.
Good, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't realise it was that. I don't know. I never really think of things as an achievement. You sort of tick things off as you go along, don't you? You know, your debut, and then getting on the coaching ladder at a relatively young age because of injury. So everything's kind of been fast forwarded for me. I had this great master plan of what every player played till mid to late 30s, going to coaching on the back of that. I'm 41 now, coaching the Premier League for a few years, coached at different countries. So achievement-wise, it's just to keep on progressing, keep on getting better, keep on working as hard as you can. And I think on the back of that, you go back to those very first qualities that we mentioned, the coaches instilling here at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old at Middlesbrough. Just keep progressing. Never rest on your laurels. You just got to. There's so many people that want the job that you're in. You've got to just keep being the best you can possibly be.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely vouch for like that mindset that you've got. But looking back, are you happy with what you've done so far?
Yeah, it could be better, but in general, yeah, it's going okay. I think everybody, if you don't look back and think, I could have done that a bit better, I could have told Lewis Craven to put it in the bottom corner instead of the middle goal at Middlesbrough away when I had it, I might have got, but no. In general, yeah, you're not one for regretting really. I think you try and look forward instead of back.
Yeah, absolutely. But looking forwards, you're 41. Still very young in terms of coaching. Robbie Stockdale head coach eventually?
I think at some stage, yeah. I mean, I've never been in a rush to do anything, and I mean that as at 35, I was first team coach at Sunderland under Sam. If you'd have told me that 2 years prior to that, I'd have said, you're having a laugh. So if the right opportunity comes up and I feel that I can have a good go at it, then yeah, I don't see why not. But at the same time, I've worked under some fantastic managers. You know, I look at that list before, international managers, Advocat, Moyes, Allardyce, Coleman. You know, if I was a head coach, I wouldn't be getting that opportunity to work under them and learn from them. So it kind of, you know, if it carries on like this, brilliant.
So one of the biggest questions that we ever ask on this podcast when we have guests on is naming a five-a-side team for players who you've played with. I'll be nice and we'll give you two subs as well if you want to have the two subs as well. But what is the Robbie Stockdale five-a-side team?
Right, so I've gone purely Middlesbrough players that I played with.
Okay.
I thought that would be much easier to try and limit the amount of players that I could choose. So in goal, Matt Schwarzer.
Yep, of course, yeah.
Given.
Schwarzer in goal. Because if we play proper five-a-side goals, he sort of could lie down and sort of fill them all anyway, can't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going one at the back. I'm going to be quite adventurous. One at the back, I'm going to Southgate.
Okay, yeah.
So if it was 11 aside, I'd put Hugo in.
Mm.
So God bless Hugo, but I'd put Hugo in. But five aside wasn't his particular forte. So Southgate's my defender. I'm going two in midfield.
Okay.
I'm going Robson and Jonny. I'm going for a bit of Brazilian flair in the middle of the park.
Don't think you can beat that, to be honest, can you?
Robson was an absolute beast. Absolute
yeah.
player. He was, so strong, technical, fast. I think for five-a-side, he'd be very good. And obviously, Juninho can do his little bits. So I've got one place for a centre forward. The best player I ever played with at Middlesbrough, in my opinion, was Boxic.
Good shout.
Yeah.
That's a good team.
When he was bothered, I was unplayable.
It's true that is true. When he was bothered, he was world class because you could look at the goals when he scored against Leicester, where he scored that dink from about 30, 40 yards as well. Newcastle as well, he scored that free kick as well.
He was a bit of a loner. He was a bit aloof to everybody else. I actually got on quite well with him. I don't know why, but I did. But I remember one of his first training sessions, and he was up for it in this training session. I remember coming off, and I remember the senior players just going like, "Wow!" It was almost like an under-18 had been dropped down to train with the under-10s. Stronger than them. He was so much quick. He was when he was on. He was world class.
Yeah.
So that's five, is it?
Yeah, that's
five.
Yeah. Do you want a couple of subs?
I'll go a couple of subs. So I'm imagining that team is probably going to get a couple of goals up, and then we'll need to sort of shut it out a little bit. We'll go. I'm in between two for a midfield replacement for Juninho because I'm wiping him off after he's done his magic. And it'd be Paul Ince or Robbie Mustoe. Between the two, toss of a coin for them two. Robbie was really underrated. Ince, he was a top player.
World class, yeah.
So let's go Ince. And I need another player on for a subs place. I think I'm going to have to take Boxic off at some time, aren't I?
Well, given that you've just said that when his attitude was right, you might.
And then he'll want to come off for to get a little round of applause. So let's go with another forward. Oh, I'm struggling now.
You've played with some great strikers during that era as well, Robbie. So
Ricard?
Ricard, all-time leading goal scorer for Boro.
Is the goal big enough for Hamilton to score in?
Attempted to kind of relive your youth and go into the striker position with Emerson and Juninho, creating chances.
Let's go with. Tell you, we'll go with a really, really talented player who you'll have seen glimpses of him. He played in front. I mentioned him earlier. I'm going with Marinelli in a 5-a-side team. 11-a-side was too big for him at the time, but Carlos, I'm not kidding you, was the most skillful player. He was more skillful than Janino with the ball at his feet. He could do things that were fantastic. But I think once we're winning, if we give the ball to Carlos, then he can just go do his little bits and keep the ball for a couple of minutes on his own.
Guess who's on the back of Tom's Boro top at the moment?
Yeah, it's actually he actually has got Marinelli.
Yeah, he actually got Marinelli on the back.
Oh yeah, so he never passed to me in 11-a-side, so I can't imagine he would in 5-a-side. So that'd be fine. Then it works, doesn't it?
It's interesting that with Marinelli because like you're saying that he was really skillful, but he never made it like properly made it, did he? And we obviously had loads of potential too. So like, was the pitch just a bit too big for him? Was 11-a-side just not his game? Do you know what I mean? He would have been better at 7s or 5s.
I say that a bit tongue in cheek. He was a young kid when he came to us.
Yeah.
Argentina. It'd have been a big deal for him to come over at that time. He actually started the season in the team with Steve, I think it must have been. But honestly, in training, he was second to none. He was fantastic. He was a real sort of, and then glimpses of him in the matches. But again, it was a big ask for him as a young player coming over from Argentina to the Premier League. I think we underestimate that at times.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was interested in that one. But one final question, Robbie. What is the one piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to become a professional footballer?
Be dedicated, work hard, try your best. I mean, it's been very kind what some of the words you've said about myself tonight, but I was never the most talented of players. There was more talented players at youth team levels and things like that than me, but I think not that they didn't. I just dedicated my life to it. It was a case of when your mates were going out on a Friday night, I was staying in.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really cheesy, but that was the case. And just work hard. You've got the one thing I look at now, players and young players coming through, is they've all got the ability to get into the building. Have they got the attitude to stay in it?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. If they haven't got the mental drive to keep pushing themselves, and it's not always the coaches that need to push them. We try our best, but the best thing is when a player comes and says, "Have you got 10 minutes to work on this with me?" And you go, "Yeah, of course I will." But we've got to deal with 40 players every day. So we're thinking about the big picture of getting a team to play well on a Saturday. But if a player comes and asks for knowledge and help and a bit of guidance, that's the best thing. So I would always say that you've got to take ownership for yourself sometimes. Don't just think that other people are going to give you it on a plate. You've got to take ownership and really focus yourself on being the best you can possibly be. And if it's good enough, great. If it's not good enough and you've done that, then you can do no more, can you?
You can't. Robbie, that was great. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Really, really enjoyed that chat. It was really insightful, and I wish you all the best at West Brom and obviously in future jobs too. Maybe that head coach job's going to come around sooner rather than later. It depends obviously what job comes around for you. But best of luck with West Brom. We're hoping we don't see you next year, maybe, if you're still with West Brom. But if you do come down, it'd be nice to see you back at the Riverside as well if you do stay on. But this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was all your matchday chatter in a pod.